Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Andrea and I talking through why most women never get as lean as they want. I think this will be a really fun episode. Kind of going to be interviewing you, Andrea, and then of course I will be providing my thoughts as always. But you work with so many clients, you've helped so many of our clients just get shredded, like really go next level. We talked through a lot of your competitors and things of that nature that you worked with. So I'm really excited to get into this. Are you good to just get right into it?
Sure.
Cool. All right, so let's start here. What do you think is the real reason so many women who train hard and track their food don't look as lean or muscular as they want?
So whenever somebody first starts out, we're like working through what have been their roadblocks so far. And sometimes they know exactly what it is and they just want somebody to take the wheel. And sometimes they're not quite sure. And it's like, I don't know, I've been doing everything that I feel like I need to be doing, but my body's just not responding. And from my perspective, and of course, there's going to be outliers to this, but the most common thing I would say is women are trying to diet too often and are afraid to commit to a build phase for a significant amount of time. As soon as the scale starts going up or they start to feel a little bit softer, that's scary because they've worked so hard to diet. And especially women who are like my age or older have probably
Pretty old,
been
yeah.
pretty old, like getting up there, are like have not come up with the like muscle mommy type thing. Like that's a more recent phenomenon. And through the 90s and like throughout our childhood and our mom's childhood, it was just stay as thin as possible. And so the thought of the scale going up intentionally it can really mess with your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I see there's a lot of both fear of the scale going up, but also an extreme fear of being hungry.
Mm, yeah.
I don't know if extreme is the right word, but I feel like a lot of clients have just had they spent so much time trying to diet, done it poorly from like a food selection perspective. Hey, maybe our body just wasn't primed to be all that responsive to fat loss. And fat loss is just like we're super hungry, we're not seeing the results we want from it. So there's like a fear to move in either direction. But I would say
Yeah, I
as
guess
well.
I
Go ahead.
guess I was thinking about this as progression, not just in getting lean. So I need to think about that from that direction more so. And I think you're exactly right on that. There's so much volume eating and if it fits
Oh
your
yeah.
macros type eating so that we can make sure that we're not letting any craving go untouched or however you would say that or like not feeling overly hungry at any part of the day. That is true for sure.
I would also say just not actually training properly to build muscle. It's a huge one, which I imagine we'll probably get into later on. Okay, so you work with a lot of women who are already pretty advanced. Are there any patterns we didn't touch on there that you notice most consistently in clients who come to us stuck? I feel like we kind of touched on it, but I'm curious if anything else stands out.
With getting lean specifically, yeah, the fear of being hungry or trying to fit in every craving is I would say the biggest thing. And then of course bites and taste of things here and there and meals out are huge because it's so easy to look back on the week and go, I crushed it. I don't know why I didn't lose any weight. And it's just very easy to forget those little things
Oh
where
yeah.
you took a bite of your kid's plate because they didn't finish it and you went out to eat, but you made good decisions. And good decisions are awesome and it's healthier than just blowing it. But it doesn't mean that you stayed within the calorie range that you think you did.
Like I didn't track my weekend, but I made good decisions type thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. 100%. Um, I feel like there's a ton of misinformation out there about what fat loss even looks like from like a miss or like false beliefs people have around like how fat loss should go for like leanish women. Anything that jumps out to you there? I would say something that stands out to me right away is
Yeah.
just around like calorie intake. There's a lot of just
Okay.
arbitrary, like maybe your favorite influencer eats 2,000 calories a day and she's quite lean. So you
Yeah.
think you should be able to diet on 2,000 calories a day and get shredded as well. Now, maybe she's at maintenance. Maybe that's not what it took her to diet. Maybe she's on a cleanse. Like there's a lot. I think that is quite common where you have to dig sometimes to get there, especially if you're a lean person trying to get leaner.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely common. And needing to do cardio is another one that I
Oh,
think
yeah.
is a big misconception. Where my brain immediately
In
went with
terms of
this,
you probably are going to need to do some cardio,
yes,
and people think
yes,
you might
yes.
not. Okay.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of people out there that will say cardio is terrible for fat loss and you shouldn't have to do it,
Yeah.
which is just wrong for most people. And we've done a lot of podcasts on that, so I'll just kind of glaze over that one for now. But where my brain immediately went with this is there's kind of two groups where one group has more fat than they think and they need to lose more weight than they think they need to. And then the
Hmm.
other group is we actually don't need to lose that much weight. We actually would look way different more by building muscle than continuing the fat loss side of things.
I agree. And I think that a lot of times, at least what I see is with those two groups, a lot of times that person who's already very lean and like, hey, we just need to build muscle, oftentimes is under the assumption that they just need to get leaner to get the physique they want. When it's like, no, this isn't going to do anything for us. We need to build, like, kind of build shape. And then on the flip side, that other demographic oftentimes thinks like, I just need to build a little bit more muscle or maybe get like a little bit leaner when, hey, we actually might need to lose like 10% of our body weight to actually get as lean as you want to uncover the tissue that we have.
Yeah.
I would fully agree with that. Anything else to add there?
I mean, I feel like we could riff on that for a whole podcast, but I think that those are the main things.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the calorie intake is a big one, and then no cardio is a big one. As a whole, just like this idea that it's gonna be super easy if you just like find the right, which I find it less and less. I don't know if we're kind of moving past that. I don't know if that was more so with the IFYM movement, which is less prevalent now, but like I think that like do too much, of course, everyone knows this from listening to the podcast, but like too much flexible dieting just makes things so much harder in general. From a coaching perspective, where do you think most coaches go wrong working with advanced clients trying to get leaner?
Not pushing them hard enough, for sure. And that's
Absolutely.
definitely like I feel like all of us have kind of gone through that phase and have kind of come to feeling more comfortable with pushing our clients harder in a fat loss phase because again like you there's this whole world in the fitness industry that's saying you should never go below 60 grams of fat as a female or you should never have to do cardio and you should never XYZ and really that's just mostly a bunch of marketing because that sounds really nice to be able to lose fat on that and so like everybody's going to work with that coach who doesn't have to bring their clients calories lower. But the reality is, especially the leaner someone is and the leaner they're trying to get from that point, the harder that becomes. So if you have somebody, I'll use extremes. If you have somebody who's 100 pounds overweight, it's going to be very easy for them to lose the first 25 pounds. Like they could just cut out soda or cut out one meal out per day, and that's gonna like weight will drop off of them like crazy. But if you have somebody really lean, they already have an outline of their abs and they want to get photo shoot shredded. Oh my goodness. Then they're going to have to dial things in way more. They're going to have to weigh all of their food on the food scale. They're going to need to do cardio. That's just the reality of being already advanced and trying to push to the next level.
Yeah, and I mean, even like if we're not just, I think it's important to be realistic here. Like, even if you're not like trying to get like photo shoot shredded, but like, hey, I'm already lean, I'm a petite woman, and I want to see my abs come through pretty well. You're probably gonna have to do that as well. Like, there's not gonna be a ton of room for error. We're probably gonna have to do a good amount of cardio. We're gonna have to weigh our food. Now, that's not like how we have to live long term, But for that phase, we probably will have to be very, very dialed in. I agree, though. I think that, I don't know, the whole like, we should never, basically, it should just never be difficult if we use the right approach. I don't think that the people who've done that have ever actually like gotten somebody to like a more advanced level, if that makes sense. It's just, I think it's mostly just like people who comment on Instagram because they're not busy actually coaching anyone. I don't know. That's my take. Uh, we've talked a lot about the things like basic nutrition, managing recovery, making sure we are in a place of adequate energy availability. So just eating plenty of food. When it comes to like trying to get someone lean, I mean, these all kind of go hand in hand. Is there a specific, like, hey, here's the thing we typically need to do before we push fat loss? Like, one of those that stands out the most in terms of, like, we just need to get better at recovery. We need to go through an entirely different phase first. Does anything stand out there?
Yeah, if somebody, well, of course it's going to be different for everybody because for some women like we talked about a little bit, they're they're going to change their shape most by building muscle. And so maybe if they're already pretty lean or they're coming out of a fat loss phase, then we might start with several months of building first, body recomp or building, in order to get them recovering better, increase their energy availability, like get them to a place where when they do diet again, they're actually going to have more shape and muscle and see a difference in their physique. Whereas
Yeah.
if somebody already has a good amount of muscle and they're coming in and ready for a fat loss phase already, then I'm going to start them first in a primer phase, which is just setting up a good foundation and making sure that once we go into fat loss, all of the habits are already there. Their biofeedback is already good. When all of those things are already in place, then once we pull calories down, we know that it's pretty much just going to work like clockwork. Whereas if somebody gets started and we just immediately throw a deficit at them, we haven't worked with this person, maybe they're telling us that everything is really dialed in and they're eating 3,000 calories a day or whatever. But then once we don't really know until we work with
Yeah.
them, at least for a couple weeks. And so if we start with that primer phase first, we can check all those boxes and then we know, okay, we're in a really good place for fat loss. Let's pull that lever and get into it.
Yeah. Okay. I fully agree. Now, I was talking the other day about aggressive fat loss, when we might apply that. And Natalie and I chatted about this a bit earlier as well, but I'm curious your take, like a more aggressive start to a fat loss phase, or in general, just a more aggressive fat loss phase. Like I know with Janae, you guys did a couple mini cuts. When or when do you apply that? Like how often do you find yourself applying that? Because I do think there's some difference between like if we're working with like a leaner female clientele versus like a male, for example. Like, do you find yourself applying that a lot?
Oh, I wouldn't say a lot, honestly. I do apply it whenever I can because I really like doing that. But my sort of mental checklist for that is most likely somebody that's worked with me for quite a while. Also, somebody who probably has a little bit more body fat to lose. If somebody's already starting out really lean, we're at a little bit more risk of losing muscle by starting really aggressively. They would have to be pretty lean for that to be a concern, but it is one of the things that I would look at. Like with Janae, it wasn't really necessary for her to start off super aggressively. So having a little bit more body fat means that they're not as likely to struggle with a lot of physical hunger, maybe like psychological hunger and cravings, but not physical hunger. And I also want somebody to be starting out with, relative to them, fairly high calories. There are some people where we can build for quite a while and their calories don't get up all that high, which is another, we could probably go on a tangent with that too because I feel like everybody expects to be able to build their calories up through a reverse diet to like 2,500 and it's just not the case for
Yeah.
some people. And so if I have somebody that we're not able to, without a lot of fat gain, we're not able to get their calories up significantly high in a recomp or a build phase, then I'm probably not going to start them off with a really aggressive deficit just because we'd have to pull down to such low calories that it's not all that realistic. And then the other person who I wouldn't use this for is someone who's a little bit newer. Like if this is somebody's first fat loss phase, I'm not going to do that just because it's kind of like starting off in a race car instead of like starting out with whatever you would learn to drive in. It's just too much too soon, and it adds difficulty for someone who's newer to tracking macros or dieting in general.
Pretty sure everybody learns to drive in a Ford Taurus. So on the flip side, then, what are we looking for? Like, what does a smart primary phase or health phase look like if someone's not ready for fat loss? Just what are the main boxes you're trying to tick there?
I want to be able to get somebody's energy availability up. So if somebody starts out, whether actually eating very low food or just have the perception that they're eating very low calories all the time, we want to get their calories up to a reasonable amount, which is going to be different for everybody. But so I can't even give a number there, but just relative to their body weight, a significant amount. We want their biofeedback to be in a good spot. So digestion should be good, which means not a ton of bloating, like actual bloat. Like you can feel full at the end of the day, but actual like that pressure in your stomach after meals, we don't want a ton of that. Not a lot of like gas or loose stools or constipation. And most of the time through the primer phase, we can fix those issues pretty easily by just getting them eating at a regular pattern throughout the
Yeah.
day and getting their micronutrients and fiber dialed in. Usually that's all it is to fix that. We want them sleeping pretty well because that's how you're going to recover. And if we're already sleeping pretty poorly and then we add a deficit, it doesn't always go really well. That usually can worsen that issue, or at least if it doesn't worsen the issue, it just isn't optimal for fat loss because there are the studies where they've got the two groups where one sleeps 8 hours, one sleeps 6 hours, and the group that it sleeps 6 hours loses way more muscle, same amount of weight, but more muscle, less fat. So we want pretty good sleep. Sometimes I do work with a lot of women that are like perimenopausal, for example. And sometimes that's just not an issue that we're going to be able to fix with habits and nutrition. So we do the best that we can. Like if your progesterone is just low, you might just not have good sleep. We need to actually like fix the progesterone issue. It's not just that we need a colder, darker room at night or something like that. So habits, we want habits to be in a good place. If you're somebody who tends to just kind of like snack across the day and you don't have whole food meals, or you don't have any system in place for your food, like you're just constantly running through the drive-through on the way home because you've gone 7 hours without eating anything. Those are kind of the things that we need to make sure are dialed in and in a better place before we go into fat loss, because that doesn't get any easier once you're now hungry on top of not having that foundation already.
Okay. Okay. I like that. So talking about then, okay, this client has gotten super lean, got to the end goal we wanted there. How do you set realistic expectations around how lean we can stay?
So if somebody, it depends on how lean the person is getting. So when you say super lean, it depends on how far that is from that person's settling point, kind of. So
Okay.
if they're, and of course we've just talked about their habits. We've already gotten their habits into a good place by this point, and most often this is somebody that's more advanced anyway, and so that's not an issue. But let's just say somebody doesn't have the right habits set up. Their set point because of those habits is going to be a higher body fat than someone who doesn't, and so that plays a part there. But if somebody gets photo shoot lean or stage lean, then we're talking through this isn't a realistic body fat to stay at long term. And usually, in my experience, this hasn't been a problem anyway. I haven't had anybody who's just expecting to stay that lean, because by the time they get there, you're feeling it, and they're just like, it's kind of accepted that they want to get back to a place where they're sleeping a little better, hormones are back to normal, and that kind of thing. So that honestly hasn't been a thing that I've had to manage expectations around too much whenever it's that extreme lean. Now, if somebody just gets pretty lifestyle lean, then it's a conversation around, okay, we are planning to stay pretty close to this body composition as we reverse diet, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stay the exact same on the scale. And
Hmm.
we'll probably see some of your measurements fluctuate a bit, but what we're looking for is your waist measurement, especially, to stay pretty close to what it is at the end of the fat loss phase. So below the navel measurement probably will come up a little bit because we just have more food in your system. And then beyond that, if we see things like your glute measurement coming up but your waist is staying the same, that's actually a really good thing.
Right.
So I feel like I kind of rambled away from the question a little bit, but we if we're getting lifestyle lean, we're definitely much more able and likely to stay pretty close to that as we bring food back up, rather than somebody getting lean to the point that it's impacting how they're feeling.
Yeah. And I would say, like, with a photo shoot, it definitely depends. Like, I have for sure taken people through photo shoot preps where it's like, yeah, we can stay here. And it's not because we can also maintain on a lot more food. So I think that's like that's for sure very variable. For sure, if we're getting on stage, we're probably gonna have to gain some body fat. But I always like to explain as well, like, if you haven't been able to maintain this level of leanness before, it's kind of like, imagine it's like we're in a nicer apartment and the rent's higher, right? Same thing here. Like, we can't just go back to your old habits, as you said, and expect to just be able to maintain at this new level, doing the same thing we were doing previously. So it will, again, there will be like kind of a higher cost, and like, how dialed in are we? How many untracked meals do we take? Things of that nature.
I like
Um,
that analogy.
when we're talking about someone in this post diet phase, or reverse diet, who is scared of gaining body fat after getting their leanest, what do you say? Like, how do you kind of help someone through that? Because I feel there's oftentimes like, hey, it's the first time I successfully got lean. I've never been able to get my body to respond like this before. It's so scary to let go of this. How do you address that?
A lot of times, that fear is coming from someone who actually isn't even gaining body fat. So, showing them the data is a lot of times pretty helpful. So, like, look, your pictures here versus your pictures here, you're 2 pounds heavier, but you still have these lines in your quads, you still have these lines here and here, and your waist measurement is the same. And so, just showing them the objective data can be really helpful. And I'll also talk them through, like, listen, I also know that even seeing the objective data doesn't always help whenever this is an emotional reaction, not an objective reaction. So you probably already know objectively that this is not as big of a problem, but emotionally, whenever you step on the scale, that doesn't always help immediately. And so we're just, it really depends on how the person brings it up and presents that worry to me, how I talk them through it. But I'll always start with the objective data and then just address like what their emotional concerns are with it. And a lot of times, if we kind of start from the end point, like where what they're saying to me about the emotion that they're having, and then work backwards to, like, from the fear to what, how do I say this, from what their fear is to what, like, if we play that out long term, it usually is something that they can kind of work through to get to, like, oh, that actually isn't the end of the world. Like,
Yeah.
if we gain 5 pounds of body fat over the next 6 months of building, for example, which probably isn't going to be the case anyway, that takes 5 weeks in the next fat loss phase to lose. So, okay, worst case scenario, we're up 5 pounds of body fat. Now what? Like, is that actually a huge deal? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's very well put. I think that a lot of times it comes back to the same fear in the fat, as in the fat loss phase of my body. What if my body's not responsive? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just something that there needs to be some awareness around, and just oftentimes people just need to dig into a little bit more, because it's like I've had this conversation with a few clients quite frequently. Like, hey, we don't need to be like worst case, we do gain a couple pounds of body fat, but your body responded super well. We already have the proof in the fact that we like got the outcome that we wanted. Worst case, if we do gain a couple pounds of body fat, your body does like this will get easier the longer we spend working through these different phases. You're going to be in a healthier position still next time. We're going to have more muscle. Like in the future, if we have to diet again, it'll be easier, right? So you're right. I think people it's easy to look at it as like the first time I got there, it's typically so hard or a lot harder. And then every time you do it, like dieting for me for like a photo shoot now doesn't really feel that, like my last photo shoot didn't really feel like I was dieting until the last 2 weeks when we like removed all fat and we're doing cardio twice a day. And then I was basically just tired of doing a lot of cardio and that's it. But it's very much a skill, and it's so much easier the next time you do it once you've done it successfully. So I think just working through those things and also understanding like how much having more muscle will make it easier for you to maintain a leaner physique over time, it really just helps a lot. Last question. When we're talking about coaches who want to get better at helping women get incredible, sustainable physique results, any other advice you would give that demographic? I feel like we have a lot of newer coaches who like want to work with us, or getting a feel for like how do I go about getting someone results like this? Any insights there?
The most impactful thing that you can do is take yourself through it, because you can't take your client I started to say you can't take your client somewhere you haven't been. I have coached some women to stage, but I have not done that yet. But the process I have gone through. So you need to be able to experience the hunger, experience the cardio, do the things that you're asking your clients to do. Because if you don't, that's where you get like imposter syndrome that pops up. It's kind of like if you aren't even hitting your macros, you're not going to feel good about holding your clients to the standard that they need to in order to see the progress that they want. And so for you to follow through on like basically walk the talk or talk the walk, whichever that saying is, you need to be able to be confident that you're doing that, because that confidence carries over so much into asking your clients to hold that standard as well. Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense. And I don't think this means you have to be like the most jacked or the most lean. I'm definitely not. But the way we operate, the way we have all pushed ourselves, and like the amount that we've like gone through it with like our own physiques and the different fat loss phases and like pushing things for photo shoot preps and things of that nature has helped us so much. And that's the same thing. Like I was talking with a coach on my roster the other day about this, where she was talking about how she wants to completely rework her business, not happy with like the level of client that she attracts. And that was very much my advice, is almost like so describe to me the type of person you want to work with. And it was someone who was like quite advanced and wanted a more advanced result still. It's like, okay, have you been there yourself? Why would that person trust you or hire you if you hadn't, right? Or let alone like, have we gotten someone else results like that? Like I think in that instance, taking yourself there. Now again, like it might be like you might not have incredible genetics to be like the most jacked, right? But still like operating like that person, maximizing your physique, that's the best place to possibly start. I would agree. It's very similar to like someone who, hey, I want to be a great coach, but I'm not going to invest in a coach who's too expensive for me or has never worked with a coach themselves, right? It's like, how are we going to get there? Like, what's the plan here?
Yeah. Or even things like I want to, like the client wanting to build muscle, but yet you yourself are scared to let go of the fat loss phase and go into a build, which is a huge one for coaches because there's pressure to look lean and look the part. And so going into a build phase is uncomfortable because you look softer, the lines get more blurry. That one's, I would say that's the thing that I've run into the most with client or with coaches that I've coached.
1000%. A building phase, especially because if you haven't gone through that yourself, it is so, because it's way harder to gauge progress in a building phase than it is in a fat loss phase. Fat loss
Mm-hmm.
is simple in terms
Mm-hmm.
of measuring progress and knowing when to make adjustments. A building phase, if that's not something you've experienced firsthand, I really think it's going to be extremely hard to be able to coach someone else through it. Cool. Any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. We touched on a lot of different things pretty quickly here. But I think that we kind of hit like the most common things that are holding most women back. But if if you are somebody who gets decision fatigue or overwhelmed with all of the different things that you're hearing, one of the best things that you can do is hire a coach and buy into that process and just sort of like take the wheel. And that solves for so much of that decision fatigue because there are a lot of ways to get to the same place.
Yes.
There are a lot of different methods to build muscle. There are a lot of different methods to get lean. We all three of us on the team have different coaches and we've just recently gone through diets and they were all three different and we all got a good
All
result.
very, very different processes.
Yeah. And we all did well. And so there's different ways to get to the same place. But if you're getting distracted by different information or you're trying to take the things that, and I find this for coaches is common too. If you're trying to learn from all these different sources and kind of mash them up all together to create like this hybrid plan of everybody, it's just not going to work. And the best thing that you can do is turn your brain off, which sounds bad. That's not exactly how I mean it. Ask questions, learn throughout the process, but it is really nice to just like, here, you take this. I'm going to turn my brain off on the decision making aspect and follow the plan. And you will learn so much by doing that. And if you're not a coach and just want the result, you will get such great results by just taking the decision and like the squirrel brain out of the equation.
Absolutely. As you said, there's many different ways we can get the same result. We all three of us work with different coaches, we have very different processes. All three of our fat loss phases, Natalie's still in hers. The approach has been very different. All got great results. I think that's a good way to just explain it. Even like within the three of us, we do things a little bit differently. I mean, very similarly, honestly. I don't know that it's actually that different, except for Natalie's meaner than we are. But aside of that, point being, like, if you were trying to hold on to, like, well, but I saw this on Instagram, should I be doing this instead? Should I be doing this instead? That will kill our progress. Cool. All right. Well, that is all we have for you guys for today. If you would like to work with our team, link to apply is in the show notes. If you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and we will catch you guys next time.